Hi everyone, this is Kevin Wagner, the Keto Advocate. In January of 2016, I had the privilege to sit down and chat with Dr. Susan Masino at the first annual conference on nutritional ketosis and metabolic therapeutics held in Tampa, Florida. Let's see what Dr. Masino had to say.
Oh, sure. My name is Susan Masino. I'm a neuroscientist. I trained at Tufts University and the University of California, Irvine. I did my graduate work in imaging and electrophysiology. And then I started working on really basic science on the molecule adenosine as a postdoc. I started looking at the regulation of adenosine, and through a sort of circuitous route that led me to the hypothesis that the ketogenic diet may increase adenosine. And that's what I've been working on for well over 10 years now, and it's really taken over, I would say, my laboratory and my life, really. It's a very exciting area.
Could you tell us about the topic you'll be speaking about here at the conference?
So at this inaugural conference, I'll be talking about the role of adenosine in the effects of the ketogenic diet and how I think that adenosine could be responsible for some acute and also for some long-term effects of the ketogenic diet, and how my hypothesis about adenosine provides other predictions for other disorders that the ketogenic diet might be helpful with, such as pain and autism, which are also two areas that I'm working on in my laboratory. Well, I think a real focus on really well done, well-controlled dietary research is becoming more and more urgent as a public health matter. And I personally, my real interest is in brain health. It's not really in brain disease, because if you can improve brain health, you can prevent or delay or possibly mitigate the effects of any possible brain disease. So that's really my passion, and that's something that I feel should be emphasized in terms of public policies, in terms of the way we organize our society is with a focus on brain health. Because if we want to solve our problems, we need the best brains. We need our best brains on it. So that's kind of a conceptual focus that I think should really come to the forefront throughout kind of everything that we do. I do think trying to look at differences in men versus women might be important with dietary research. And those are some of the main issues. Another thing that I'm working on, though, is trying to look at if these metabolic approaches can essentially modify disease and reverse the disease process somewhat. And that's something we've started working on now to see if the ketogenic diet, perhaps via adenosine, can reverse some of those pathological processes. And there's evidence for both the ketogenic diet and adenosine being able to do that, but we're not sure if they're doing those independently or if the ketogenic diet might be doing it through adenosine, or if there might be a number of key mechanisms that are important for that. Well, let's see. I have a lot of my papers are published and can be found freely online. I have a website at Trinity College. I'm called the Vernon Roosa Professor of Applied Science at Trinity College, which is a wonderful title because even though I started out as a basic scientist, my work has become very applied. And is even becoming more so with my interest in public policies. And in addition to, general internet searches, I also have 2 books out, and I have another one forthcoming. So I have a book that's completely on adenosine. It's called Adenosine, A Key Link Between Metabolism and Neuronal Excitability. I think that's the title. But anyway, it's about adenosine, and it's everything you wanted to know about adenosine. And then I have a book that just came out called Homeostatic Control of Brain Function, and that includes a lot of information about the ketogenic diet and adenosine, as well as a number of other aspects of how to maintain homeostasis at the molecular level, the behavioral level, the cellular level, and it even includes topics like acupuncture, meditation, exercise, as well as like very detailed cellular information as well. Because if you want to promote brain health, you have to promote an kind of adaptive homeostasis of brain function. So our brains are made to be dynamic and adaptable, but you don't want that going in a pathological direction. So there has to be kind of a dynamic milieu that's maintained. And I have a forthcoming book that's all about the ketogenic diet. So that's very exciting. It should be out in fall 2016. And I believe the title of that's going to be Ketogenic Diet and Metabolic Therapies, Expanded Roles in Health and Disease. So the thing that I think is exciting about that book is that it's going to talk about health and how to promote health, as well as how to prevent and treat disease. So adenosine is an evolutionarily conserved molecule that's present throughout the body, and it binds at receptors on the cell surface and has different effects in cells. In the brain, it can really be a dynamic modulator of brain activity, can also cause other cellular effects and perhaps long-term cellular effects. One reason why people may be more familiar with adenosine than they thought they were is that caffeine is an adenosine receptor antagonist. So all of us are potentially regulating the influence of caffeine on our brain function a lot of the time. And caffeine is actually the most widely used psychoactive drug worldwide. Interestingly, it always seems like there's good news about caffeine. There was just recently a report saying it lowers all-cause mortality. It's thought to maybe delay the onset of diabetes. It's thought to be beneficial with neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So the only bad news I've heard about caffeine is that too much caffeine early in pregnancy can be risky for miscarriage, and there's also some evidence about high caffeine levels. So that's not really out there in the public sphere, but I do think that high levels of caffeine during pregnancy are not a good idea. So adenosine kinase is essentially the most powerful ongoing regulator of adenosine levels. So adenosine kinase phosphorylates adenosine and essentially removes adenosine from being able to act at the adenosine receptors. There's two forms of adenosine kinase. One plays the role that I just mentioned in terms of removing its action at the receptors, and one plays more of a role in the nucleus for transcribing genetic information. So essentially it's kind of interacting with the effects of adenosine and modulating that. Too much adenosine kinase will remove enough adenosine to can actually cause spontaneous seizures, and pathological conditions such as some neurodegenerative conditions and epilepsy are characterized by increased levels of adenosine kinase. So it's, I think, a very powerful potential therapeutic target to modulate the effects of adenosine for beneficial effects if the adenosine system has become dysregulated. That's not something that's routinely done now, and not something that would be very easy to do. Probably the best way to do that would be developing some sort of a tracer that could be used during imaging to try and see if the adenosine system is dysregulated, or if there's an area in the brain that is showing too much adenosine kinase, for example. So that would be maybe a strategy, but adenosine is very rapidly metabolized in the blood, so it's hard to relate peripheral levels to brain levels. So it's not an easy diagnostic strategy right now. It could be. It definitely could be. I think it would be hard to generalize to all epileptic seizures, but if you take out tissue post-mortem or even during surgery from people with hippocampal sclerosis and focal area of epilepsy, you can stain that tissue and find increased adenosine kinase. So it is a pathological hallmark of epileptic tissue. Of course, we don't do that with everyone, so it's hard to know if it's a characteristic of all epileptic seizures. Well, I think that if we find ways to augment, if we find diverse ways to augment adenosine, if adenosine is a key link between metabolism and neuronal activity, maybe you might be able to exercise, for example, can increase adenosine. Perhaps other strategies could increase adenosine. And if you could find other ways to increase adenosine sufficiently at the right time, maybe you could combine that with a diet. Maybe you could combine that with some other metabolic strategy, maybe a nutritional supplement or a drug, that it itself doesn't have to be that powerful. And my feeling is if we could couple together kind of a host of things that are each non-toxic and each gives a little bit of a benefit, and all are easy to comply with, we could really find a very supportive environment for brain health and physical health without a very, very specific drug that might have very, very specific and serious side effects or long-term effects. I definitely think that's a possibility. And that kind of fits into my idea that if we can put together several kind of non-toxic things that could help with these regulatory systems, you could have a less restrictive diet, a supplement, maybe another metabolic approach, maybe an anti-inflammatory approach, maybe specific diet components. And really, I think there's a lot of excitement that this is sort of a new era where we can use metabolism, which was thought for a long time to just be kind of cellular housekeeping. And I think we've realized that we've gone in the wrong direction. It's not housekeeping, it's fundamental to cell health. And promoting cell health at the most fundamental level will help with any disease or disorder or general brain health. Well, that would be a very exciting finding if there's long-term epigenetic effects that are disease-modifying, and that is why the ketogenic diet has long-term effects. That really opens the door to a very broad disease-modifying potential for these metabolic therapies. And most of the treatments we have now for most of our diseases, including epilepsy, really are suppressing symptoms and suppressing seizures. They're not helping to cure the brain. And having a long-term disease-modifying effect through an epigenetic mechanism would be an incredible breakthrough, and that's definitely something we're working on very actively. We think that for increased levels of adenosine, you would need to have either sufficient or increased ATP. So the increased ATP that's been shown in a number of studies on the ketogenic diet would provide a substrate for adenosine, because ATP can be dephosphorylated to ADP and then AMP and then to adenosine, and that can happen very rapidly. So this whole range from adenosine up to ATP is all part of kind of the cell energy charge. I think that the increased ATP is a critical part of the ketogenic diet. And when I started my hypothesis on adenosine in the ketogenic diet, one of the things that I was trying to understand is how this could have a differential effect in the brain versus the body. Because adenosine is a very, very powerful molecule and could have incredible therapeutic effects, but it also has serious side effects, such as it will stop your heart. And in terms of drug development, that's considered unacceptable. So So that was sort of a conundrum. But there's studies published showing that during fasting, which the ketogenic diet was developed to mimic the metabolic state of fasting, there is increased ATP in the brain, but not in tissues in the body. So I do think that the increased ATP in the brain is potentially a very important aspect of the ketogenic diet and perhaps a key substrate for the increased adenosine. Well, I think there is a lot of potential to really reevaluate some of the things that we're supporting via our public policies and ways that we could improve people's health across a wide variety of diseases. So, for example, one of the things that we spend a lot of money on right now is the Farm Bill. And there are some very good aspects of the Farm Bill, but a lot of money for the Farm Bill is spent on industrial agriculture, which is growing commodity crops, which is often packaged into products that might not necessarily be good for our health. So we know that what you eat and these lifestyle factors have a huge impact on chronic diseases. So what we're doing is we're paying via the Farm Bill ultimately for people to eat food that's not good for them. Then they develop a number of chronic diseases like cancer, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, of which the costs are skyrocketing year after year. And then we're paying for all of those chronic diseases via our Medicare system. So I think that there really needs to be an evaluation of what really promotes health and invest in that early on so that we're not paying to grow the wrong food and then paying huge long-term costs for these chronic diseases for which we don't have any good treatments. Well, I feel like as our knowledge about metabolic therapies and the ketogenic diet and these ways of improving brain health are, I think, exploding recently and offer so much promise for treatment, I feel like a metabolic therapy should be offered to people who are eligible. I think it should be offered to children who are targeted for brain surgery if they don't have a metabolic contraindication before they go in for surgery. It takes a while to clear that child before they actually get the surgery. I believe that child should be offered a trial on the diet. They really don't have any control over their health care. I believe that as we get more evidence with brain cancer, people with brain cancer should be offered this information about the diet. The statistics on a lot of aggressive brain cancers are not good, and it's not ethical to not provide this information. And the problem is it's going to be very difficult to get the kind of long-term gold standard studies that doctors consider evidence-based medicine. And my feeling is if it's something that's not toxic, has a strong long-term epidemiological foundation, and the patient is willing to try it, they should be given that opportunity and the information to support their choice. We don't have good options for many disorders, and people should be given information where diet could help. I believe that people with epilepsy should be given more information about diet in general and exercise and possibly caffeine, this kind of host of things that can support brain health, because maybe you can take a lower dose of your drug and reduce the side effects. Maybe it's not going to cure your seizures, but if you can use these other strategies to reduce the disease burden and thus reduce the other whatever it is that you're taking to treat that, that's just to your benefit and your overall health. That's exactly why I think brain health is so important, because people may say, well, if I don't eat well, maybe I will weigh a few pounds more or X, Y, or Z. It's like, well, it's actually not good for your brain. It's not good for your cognition. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for all of that stuff. So it's fine if you want to weigh less or more or whatever. No one's making a judgment about that. But you need to know that it's not the optimal thing for your brain. And I think people might be more cognizant about it, or parents might be, if they realize it was the brain, not just weighing a few pounds more or less.